For those who do not know, the Hill of San Andreas is in a kind of small hill, and ended in a ravine on one of its sides. These ravines gave to a stream with a dirt road on the side. Today there's already a boulevard of the most sought after in Riobamba. But in the early 90s there was nothing like that. There in the creek they had found Raul's body. I remember well that several children gathered from the ravines where the streets of the hill ended to see all the movement of the patrols, and curious that arrived to that place, Raul was playing soccer with us that day when we saw him. My brother continued, and later he saw them again, one night very close to the school, and when he said that I remembered the vision that Pedro and I had a while ago at the school. I thought about what would have happened to him, maybe if my brother had not arrived when they threw him in the street. Although they made fun of me, that was the easiest part to believe. From then on, the most macabre and bizarre things happened in my experiences. The next time I saw Pedro was very far away. He was leaning out of one of the windows of his house, and half of his face was covered by a bandage covering his wounds. That day, his dad was preparing the move. We didn't notice when they left, and they didn't say goodbye to the neighbors. We understood that the moves back then were common, and there was no fuss when the family left the neighborhood, but even with the first day, only Orlando, my brother, and I thought that something had to do with what happened that night. Orlando, since they went out with me whenever possible, especially when I had to return late from catechism or from my friend's house. My mother, even today, especially with what would have ended up happening later, feels guilty for not have given the importance she deserved to the whole situation. There were 2 or 3 days of tranquility until one afternoon when we noticed the absence of Odin, a stray cat that we adopted months ago when he was just a baby. Used to disappear in the mornings, but every afternoon when we all arrived home, he also did. Without fail, he came to us with a little bird, a mouse, or some dead insect as a gift. That day, however, it was after 8 o'clock and he didn't appear. My mother and Orlando went out to look for bread for breakfast and in search of Odin from the neighboring streets. I was alone with Ines, who was sleeping in the next room. In the distance in the street, I heard a cat screeching. It was horrible. Tremendous. It started as those noises of cats in heat, but as soon as it became something more terrifying, without a doubt it was a screech of pain. I ran out thinking that maybe Odin had run into a dog, but when I got to the street, those shrieks stopped completely in an instant. For a moment, as if a voice was telling me that I was about to run towards the darkness of the street, I took a few steps, and when I felt as if I'd came to my senses, behind me the door of the open gate, also the door of my house, opened wide. I ran back, feeling that taking care of Ines was the most important thing at that moment. As soon as I closed the door, the shrieks started again. I'm sure I was not the only one to hear them. I could not have been the only one. The sound got closer, and soon after I heard it almost in front of my house. It went completely silent again, and then I heard something on the ceiling. A thump as if it was dropping a heavy bag, and it bounced in the center. It was obvious that they had thrown something onto the house, that they had thrown something dead onto the house. The sound of a grill alerted me, and the sound of the living room door. My mother and my brother's voices reassured me. They were joking, happy. So I understood that they hadn't heard the cat screeching or anything, and what happened next was a mistake, I know, but I didn't say anything at that moment. It was too difficult to have moments of tranquility, jokes or laughter that I preferred to wait. I prefer to be quiet and wait, and this is perhaps a feeling that only those who have only lived in a family with as many problems as mine would recognize. While we were having dinner, I heard a movement in the ceiling, noticed for the others, but not for me. I couldn't think about what had happened just a while ago. The scene went on, and suddenly, something seemed to shake strongly up there, and this time, everybody noticed it. This time, Orlando quickly put on his sweater to go up to check, and I hurried after him to get there before. He loved Odin more than anyone, and I felt that if I had to avoid a bigger impact if it was really our cat, which was now on the roof, I told him that I'd go up and that if he should stop the wooden ladder we were using. It's about to break, and if you fall, I can't catch you, but you can catch me. I told him, and he listened to me, so when I went up in the distance, I could see a figure. It was Odin, or so I thought. However, he was standing, looking towards the street, giving me the sword. I spoke to him, and he didn't pay any attention to me. I shouted at him, and I called him in all the ways he obeyed us, but he didn't move. "What do you have?" asked my brother. "Is he all right?" "Yes," I told him. "Don't worry, but Together, when I said that, Odin, or the cat that was on the roof, turned slowly towards me as if he knew what I was doing not to alarm my brother. As if that creature could make fun of me. What I saw is one of the things that torment me every night when I try to sleep. And even today, every time I close my eyes, when I turn around, a half smile on the cat froze my heart. And it's that part of the animal's face that seemed to be that of a child. A face similar to Pedro's. Without wanting to, I took a step backwards that made me fall from the stairs. I fell on Orlando, who didn't calculate my weight, and we gave each other a good blow. After that, I only remember that we both cried and that my mom somehow could carry us both and put us in the house. The next thing I remember is that when I woke up in the morning with a strong headache, which was no excuse for my mother not to wake us up at 6:30 in the morning so we could get ready to go to school. During the whole morning, I wanted to convince myself that the vision of that cat or whatever it was had only been a product of my imagination. Of the darkness in my concern for Odin, of recess that I was approached by Carlos, a 6th grade boy who lived in the street, and he approached me. I thought, by reflex, that he would try to bother me or hit me as a reaction when an older boy approached me or someone from my group of friends. This time, Carlos, however, approached me seriously and with clear intent to ask me something. "Hey, what happens at night in front of your house?" I answered him that I didn't know what he was talking about. "Look, my dad always comes home late from work, and he told me, and today in the morning he told us that last night in front of your house there were 3 nuns standing on the sidewalk looking in. My mom says that my dad came home pale. When I heard what she had told me, I couldn't answer her, and I started to run. I found Orlando near her living room, but before telling him what they had just told me, I felt that I couldn't do it, that we would end up worrying my mom, and the last thing I needed was a new worry at that moment. So it just felt strange. I thought that hiding it was less real, that if I didn't talk about the things that were happening, they would stop happening. I wanted to forget about it, and I asked my mom for permission to stay at Keenan's house, one of my friends from the salon who had a collection of Zodiac and night toys that made us put up with him a little bit since he was very conceited. Time flew by at his house with Gabriel, my best friend, and me playing in Keenan's room until his mom came upstairs to invite us to dinner. In a tone that made me clear that she was inviting us to go home, we said goodbye, and Gabriel ran out insisting that they were going to kill him before being late. I suddenly had a shock of reality. I was only a few blocks from my house, but the streets were darker than usual. And again, it seemed that everyone had agreed to enter and close their doors and curtains at 8 o'clock that night. I started to walk slowly as if it would make me braver, but a silhouette crossed the street running, making me hurry my pace. It was a cat crossing the street, maybe a simple cat, but the vision of the previous night made more and more present. The only thing that I was thankful for was that the full moon illuminated a little of the way home. Suddenly I felt a tightness in my chest, and I couldn't get out of my head. I began to turn to all sides without stopping, walking in a hurry, until over a fence and in the night I could see a figure of that cat again, with almost human fractions and a body very similar to our cat, Odin. I looked as if I had not noticed it. I kept walking. The cat seemed to run at the same pace as me, finished the fence where it was going, and then jumped from roof to roof without moving away from me. Although by then I was already running as hard as my body allowed me, sore from the fall the previous day. Suddenly I stopped listening to those little jumps of the cat from roof to follow me. I felt calm for a moment. When I saw that he wasn't there anymore, I turned around to walk home, and at the corner right on the sidewalk where I had to pass towards my house, half of a black silhouette seemed to look at me, waiting for me to pass by. As soon as I saw it, it disappeared from sight again. I didn't need much imagination to realize that this silhouette was someone, a person dressed or disguised as a nun. At the moment, I was only 150 meters away from my house. However, I felt that I was never going to see my mother or my brothers and sisters again, and I started to cry, knowing that I could not go back to Keenan's house, but I could not go near my house without having to go through where the figures was waiting for me. I wish with all my heart that none of that was really happening, and open my eyes in a moment and wake up at home next to my mother and see her preparing dinner. When I had that image in my head, a giggle behind me made me stop crying. It was the gypsy boy who was laughing at me, but somehow it didn't feel like a mockery. Before I could say anything to him, he took me by the hand and started running towards the street of my house. I didn't know how, but I ran with him. I was both scared to death, and when I turned to my street, the 3 figures dressed as nuns were waiting for us.